What's the most valuable thing you've learned from therapy? Make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoy. Thanks. Story 1. No one sees the version of you that you see of yourself. Story 2. I learned that I don't have to bend over backwards to accommodate everyone around me at all times. I think I kind of was a pushover before, and now I'm getting better at setting boundaries and standing up for myself. Not everyone in my closer circle is happy about this, but now I'm learning that it is also okay to let friendships go. I don't know anyone in my friendship. Might sound weird, IDK. But yeah. Story 3. For me, therapy taught me that my personal issues were my responsibility to fix. Blaming others accomplishes nothing. To improve, you have to take responsibility for things in your control. Story 4. Sometimes it has to be you who needs to walk away from them. This is an advice that was given to me when I had a toxic friendship that was draining me for years. Story 5. That I am not responsible for the bad things that happen to me. Story 6. That psychologists are just humans. They can carry the same bias, prejudice, and preconceived ideas about you and your problems as anyone else. Some of them make their mind up about you before you even open your mouth, and you're allowed to find another therapist if they're not interested in helping you. Story 8. It's made me realize just how little I listen to my emotions normally, and that emotions are immoral and can't be rationalized away. They just exist. When my therapist asks me how I'm feeling about something, so often I don't know, or I do know the answer but it feels ugly, means so I don't want to admit it, even to myself. Once you clock how often that's happening, you realize why bottling so much stuff up is leading to your general unhappiness, stress. Still working on this, but it surprised me to have that big of a revelation when I thought of myself as being very emotionally mature. Turns out I can manage everyone else's but not my own. Story 10. While a lot of it is personal and specific to me, there is one more general learning that has stuck with me for many years. When I first started going, I would try to explain the guilt I felt for even feeling badly, being depressed, in pain, etc. I would say, well, I'm a tall white heterosexual male who has been given every privilege and opportunity in life. Why should I feel this bad? I'm so lucky. I don't deserve to feel badly, etc. Basically feeling guilty about being depressed. Anyway, my therapist plays out a little scenario for me. She tells me about two people who go to the hospital on the same day, both with the staggering and paralyzing headache. Upon seeing the doctor, one finds out they have a brain tumor, and the other finds out they were just dehydrated and had a little too much to drink the night before. When they both arrived at the hospital, they were both experiencing the same level of pain. I think it stuck with me because it's obviously very dramatic and extreme, but it helped me get over the guilt and just understand that at the end of the day, pain is pain. Depression is depression. The cause is its own separate variable that I was able to start unpacking once I was able to be like, oh, okay. I have a headache. Another quick one while I'm here. While not necessarily a learning, it was an important moment for me. Earlier this year I had a pretty big collapse and have been on STD for a few months. I ended up calling a close childhood friend who also happens to be a neurosurgeon. We spoke for a while, and by the end of talking for an hour he said something that stuck with me. He's like, so yeah, you're going through something very difficult, no doubt about it. But you made an appointment with your doctor. You're trying meds. You're seeing your therapist. You messaged me and called me. Give yourself CR. A lot of people who get to these points can't do those things. But I'm less worried about you now because I know you're doing the things to help yourself and trying your best no matter how much or little that is. Story 12. Counselors, well, some of them, at least, do not always offer the best possible advice. Story 13. Being kind to yourself is so hard because we're older gen, maybe a bit more I guess, taught implicitly for years not to do it. It is something new that you are starting against something much worse, long established. Like every new skill, it will take time to develop, and that is totally AskReddit. Don't punish yourself for a lapse in discipline when trying something new. Take a break, whether it's minutes or days or longer, and try again. It's not a setback, it's a readjustment to helping build a stronger habit to give the version of you that you want to be a chance. 10 push-ups today might not seem like much, but if yesterday was 0, then 10 is a lot. Story 15. You don't have to like your parents. It's not some sort of requirement. Story 16. That things you think may have been a small piece of your timeline actually hold a lot of weight in your current thinking. And it's good to acknowledge and explore those areas, no matter how uncomfortable at times. Also, it is not an overnight magic trick that fixes everything. You have to work at things from an honest place. Story 17. to embrace vulnerability and practice self-care. Story 18. I'm trans and that's okay. Story 19. Sometimes people deserve to lose you. Story 20. It was my mom's fault and I wasn't just being typical about it. Story 21. To be mindful and keep myself in the present as much as possible. Thinking ahead is always the source of worry. Story 22. I didn't learn much from therapy, but I learned a lot from A. A couple of the best are don't let people rent space in your head and it's none of your business what other people think of you. Also to let go of resentment. That shit will kill you. Story 23. Therapy helped me realize that I wasn't incompetent at dealing with my own issues. As much as everyone else berated me over my struggles, I had my shit figured out and it brought me some self-esteem. Of course, it's double-edged since it also means that I don't know how the fuck I'm supposed to manage in this world if I'm already managing my problems as best as I can and they still get that in the way. Alternatively, it helped me realize that I didn't need some outside validation to transition. That all that matters is what I think or know. Story 25. That it really is my brain chemistry and not just a me problem. Due to circumstances, I had to complete a 10-week program in order to qualify for getting assessed for medications. My first therapist quit after my 9th session, and since she was the only one offering the program at that clinic, I had to start again with another from week 1. Both told me that I'm doing everything right, that I know and use all the coping mechanisms, that they can't really help me from their position, and both recommended I get medicated TB if I have my own reservations about exactly how much work can really be done in 10 sessions against a lifetime of being like this, but that's a whole other issue. But the difference is honestly night and day. I can't explain to you the fucking peace I feel now. Not having a meltdown due to taking a little bit too long putting change in my purse at the grocery store, not having months of fog with no memory of events, being able to just exist in my body and environment without feeling like I've called doom upon myself for the crime of existing in a space. I still have work to do on myself, but oh my god, it's so much easier. Story 27. It doesn't work for everyone or everything. Story 28. An unexpressed need will never be met. Story 29. That I'm not as dumb as I think I am. I frequently had moments in my life where the people around me would look down on me or not allow me to do things simply because I was slower at it. I carried that throughout my life, believing that because I was so incapable of doing things, I was dumb. My perceived intelligence stems from my functionality as an adult. I am homebound and fairly dependent on my partner, but it's not because I'm dumb. It's because there's a variety of very reasonable factors as to how and why our life is set up the way it is. For example, I used to say I'm dumb because I can't drive. That's not true. I can't drive because I have a debilitating fear of driving and my ADHD makes me a poor driver. It's also basically not necessary for me to leave the house and we don't have a second car. Same with cooking. I'm not dumb because I don't know how to cook that many meals. I don't know how to cook that many meals because I'm afraid of cooking and I'm such a damn klutz, also an ADHD thing. It's tough to grapple that I have disorders and fears that make me generally not as functional as an adult should be, but I'm not lesser for it. I was raised in an environment where I was made to feel lesser for my inadequacies, but it turns out it's not completely my fault. And I shouldn't keep parroting the rhetoric that I'm not smart when I do have disorders that affect how I operate day to day. I'm still an able-bodied person who can take care of themselves and clean the house and be a loving partner. I can make use of what I currently am rather than focus on what I am not. Lol. Seriously though, I would say that I learned your mind has a way to play tricks on you to keep believing negative thoughts. So writing them down or saying the thought and why you feel that way, a lot of times the reasons don't make sense. But when you keep it inside, your brain has a way of making it make sense. For example, I feel like a failure a lot for certain reasons. But if I saw someone else with the same things going on, I wouldn't see them as a failure at all. Hope that makes sense. Story 32. Unfortunately, I only learned what I already knew. It wasn't helpful at all. Therapy for me was the same as if I used Google. Story 33. Therapists are more personally screwed up than you would think. Story 34. My late husband's drinking problem was not my fault. He would have been drinking anything he could get his hands on, whether or not I was the perfect wife. Realizing that his problem was not something I had any control over was a huge step in restoring my self-esteem. Story 35. That I will lie to them so they don't think they're doing a bad job and that might be a problem. Story 36. I feel like I learned more from psilocybins to keep it $150. Might not be accessible depending on your area, but that could also be said about therapy given the cost. To the point of the title though, I'd say after the most recent therapy session, I felt more normal about myself. He said depression is having $1 million in front of you and not feeling anything. I don't think you're depressed, I agreed. I'd be ecstatic with $1 million, haha. Story 37. That I'm not much of a failure like I always thought. That there is a reason why it's so hard for me to just do seemingly easy things. Also what some people said here in the comments, that they just want your money. They don't care or whatever. That's a US problem, my friends. Here in Germany I pay literally nothing. Story 38. To take notes of what's on my mind to sessions. Story 39. So far, that it's useless. Story 40. You have to sit with the unpleasant emotions before they'll go away. Story 41. Other people's problems aren't your problems. Story 42. You are not your thoughts. Story 43. I guess this will be downvoted, but here goes. I'd been in therapy for decades, I haven't been for years now, so I am well positioned to observe that therapy doesn't work. Story 44. If you pay money, people will listen to you. Story 45. The stories I tell myself are mostly untrue and based on things I had to do to cope with childhood. Story 46. From DBT, I like the concept opposite action. It helps me act in ways that are healthy even when the depression is telling me to be inactive, isolate, etc. Story 47. You have to want to change, and you're the only person who can put those changes into motion. Story 48. How to recognize my patterns of depression and avoid suicidal thoughts. If you are not surprised by how depressed you are becoming, it makes it easier to cope. I still have some intrusive thoughts, but I've been to rock bottom and back twice now. I'm still kicking. Story 49. All emotions are valid, but not all emotions reflect reality. Story 50. I learned that therapy isn't a magic solution or cure. You have to put in work yourself. I also learned that saying no is okay, that I don't have to do everything that my family, friends, or work asks of me, and most importantly, that the only one that considered me selfish was myself. I got down hard from stress, which led to me having anxiety, panic attacks, and almost got depression. Therapy was a wonderful help. Story 52. As someone who struggles with the conflict between believing incapable of so much but often failing, I am a good person, capable of great things who also has faults I'm working on. Story 53. That I'm a paycheck, and even if they don't call or they cancel the appointment a few hours before, I still have to pay them half of the $200 hourly rate. Story 54. It's not worth it. Story 55. That I don't have to pay attention to every weird thing my mind comes up with. Story 56. Breathing techniques. They help in almost every situation. Nausea, panicking, talking, nervous, public speaking, being in public. Story 57. Most of my anger came from unrealistic expectations. Not unreasonable, per se, but unrealistic nonetheless. And taking the time to evaluate a situation, my feelings about it, my reaction, and consider what my best self would do make all the difference in the world. Story 58. It's okay to not be okay. This absolutely changed the way I think about being in touch with my feelings and coping with them. My family has always been about appearances, so I had to unlearn putting on a mask when I'm not feeling mentally healthy. Who needs to hear it, but it is okay to not be okay. Story 60. The more you run from your own feelings, the stronger they get. It's only through acknowledging and facing your feelings that you'll be able to work through them. Also, labeling feelings as good or bad is counterproductive. Your feelings are valid. How you process and express those feelings is what's important. Story 62. To be present in my relationships and life in general. Typically, I'd always deflect or allow others to choose, rather than ask for what I would have liked. I was always worried about making sure everyone else was taken care of and got what they wanted. Story 63. That therapy is a crazy scam and a pseudoscience run by people who hate you and want your money. I had a much better time just in the bare presence of my friends and family than I did paying thousands of dollars to that curly-haired cunt who never even looked me in the eye. I guarantee you my pitch got 10 miles an hour faster every day after I went to him to play ball with the boys because of how hilariously stupid that dude was. I can't believe they give people like that degrees to talk to people about their problems. The easiest job in medical history, and most still manage to screw it up. I would crack everyone up telling them about that dude's escapades after every session. Story 65. That therapy will not provide all the answers. Story 66. If someone is upset with you, they'll tell you. And if they don't tell you, then that's their problem, not yours. Story 67. That my feelings are valid. Story 68. Ask for what you want. Story 69. That I am an important person. Story 70. It's important to be more like a willow tree than an oak tree. The willow tree can bend when faced with high wind change and can bend back. A rigid oak tree will topple. Story 71. Diversify your happiness. Can't have it all on finding love, getting that job, etc. Ever see Soul, that Pixar movie? Same idea. Story 72. Catastrophizing only enhances your anxieties when the reality of the situation is that 99% of the time it's much different and much better than you're thinking in the moment. Give yourself a break, a moment to digest and a moment to wonder what it might be like if the exact opposite of your thoughts are true. Story 74. I have to live with my depression, but I don't always have to live in it. Story 75. Realizing that it's okay not to have everything figured out and that it's essential to prioritize self-care and set personal boundaries. This mindset shift has made a significant impact on my mental health and overall well-being, and it's something that I constantly remind myself of in times of stress or uncertainty. Story 77. That it's not the therapist's job to keep you content, just to keep you functional and make sure you're not a danger to yourself or others. Story 78. That at the end of life, everyone surveyed tends to say they wish they'd been easier on themselves. Story 79. CBT is standard in my country, unless you can afford to pay a private clinic. It's just some dude reading a list of do these 5 simple steps. You are better off watching YouTube videos, to be honest. Story 80. My thoughts don't determine who I am, my actions do. Which is precisely why my above comment matters so much to me. I recently learned I have harm OCD and, less surprisingly, PTSD. Pretty proud of the moments I have been strong and changed the course of the past for better. Hitting 40 soon, feeling some wisdom coming on. YouTube. Watch. V equals 57 Karg. Story 82. That I can eventually figure it all out on my own and save myself a lot of money. Story 83. I don't need a reason to dislike someone. Story 84. It's not all my fault. I'm not a burden. Ask for help when I need it. Story 85. Paying a professional to talk to can be way more helpful and effective than chatting with a friend, similar to how my BFF may be good with a band-aid, but when it comes to surgery you might want to seek out a surgeon. Story 86. That it wasn't my fault. Story 87. Nothing. I just go because I have noone else to talk to in the real world. Story 88. The bartender is on less of a tight schedule, so makes me feel more heard. Also, drinking beer is cheaper by the hour. Story 89. Whatever coping mechanisms you use to get through something is okay as long as you got through it, such as hoarding. Story 90. Don't hang on people or have expectations. Eventually good things will come back to you. Just be patient, be kind, and enjoy your life the way it is. It depends only on yourself how your day is going on. Story 91. I have PTSD and my therapist said just because a banknote has crinkles or cracks doesn't mean it's worth less. Story 92. No response is a response. Story 93. My mom shared with me something her therapist told her. We continually try to make our lives similar to when we were 9 years old. For some reason this has stuck with me. Story 94. Until you make your unconscious behavior patterns conscious, they will play themselves out in the world around you, and you will call it your fate. Something similar was wrongly attributed to C.G. Jung. Story 95. There is no guarantee that a therapist will be able to help you, and it's often no better than having someone to talk to and just get stuff off your chest. Story 96. That I am allowed to take time out for myself and that I can say no to people without needing to feel sickeningly guilty. Story 97. I used to hang out at club therapy in Houston in the early 90s. The one thing I learned was those couches they had in the chill room were sometimes wet. Story 98. That what you heard and what other people meant isn't always the same thing. Same with what you wanted to say, what you actually said, and what the other person heard. That it's possible to talk through this and sometimes make sure you understood the person right. That such talks can really make you closer to the person and help you bond. Story 100. I've learned to forgive. Story 101. When I told my therapist some of the more horrifying shit I saw as a teenager, which made her break down crying and am the one that had to console her, I realized how screwed up those years were and just how lucky I am to be alive. And if anyone asks, no, I will not elaborate what that horrifying shit was. Story 103. Heat. Story 104. Everyone's mind is different and works differently. You can't expect everyone to think and process things the same way you do. Story 105, that everyone is trying their best, and sometimes their best is simply not good for you. Story 106, don't escalate, communicate. Story 107, as someone with anxiety, I learned to distinguish between what is in my control and what is outside of my control when anxious. If something is out of my control, there is no point in stressing over it. I learned to focus on what I can do that is within my control. Story 108, that it doesn't make me a bad person to not talk to my mother. Story 109, I have anxiety. The best thing for me when my thoughts would get out of control and I would panic about the possibility of X, Y, or Z happening was to realize that nothing is happening right now. It's just a fear, not reality. Story 110, not necessarily what I learned but a tool I was given. No More Mr. Nice Guy by Dr. Robert Glover. https://books.apple.com/us/book/no-more-nice-guy/id8731603669. Story 111, not sure about value given how much I pay and how little I get out of it. Story 112, I've learned self-preservation. I'm not going to watch that video that I know is going to make me upset or angry. I'm not going to argue with people who I know are too dense to understand others' point of views. Self-preservation is dope. Story 113, that controlling my emotions in a healthy way is a learnable skill that I can improve with practice. Story 114, accept your emotions need you. Story 115, be stronger than I really was, made me the woman today. Story 116, I'm a therapist and I learn new things every day from all of my clients. Story 117, don't trust friendly people easily. Anyone who immediately considers you as a friend is a lie. Everyone is bad, everyone secretly hates you, people love gossip. Story 118, my unspecified anxiety turned out to be AITA. Mental health disorders aren't just your stereotypical symptoms: depression, sad, anxiety, constant worry, OCD, weirdly organized, bipolar 2 personalities, I can't concentrate, etc. Story 120, to stop catastrophizing. Story 121, I can only do what I'm capable of doing. Story 122, it's cost you a damn fortune. Story 123, absolutely nothing. Therapy was a purely frustrating and confusing experience. I did everything I could to get something valuable out of it, but I never got anything back from my therapists except them sucking their teeth and saying that sounds really hard. Story 124, you don't need to attend every argument. I have road rage and tend to fight every wrong I encounter by every company or person. Story 125, focusing on the bad shit about yourself and your life is not always at all beneficial. Weird advice cause it meant I stopped relying on the therapist, but good advice cause I've gone over the bad shit a million times and had reached a point where focusing on it was just causing me to keep those shitty feelings close. Story 127, that it's a very, very small piece of the mental health puzzle. Story 128, adjusting my expectations of other people is better than trying to change who they are. It allowed me to come to terms with the relationship I have with my mother. I found the closure I needed rather than expecting to get it from her. Story 129, my entire life, there has been a wounded inner child within me who has needed a responsible, loving, and compassionate adult to give them what they did not have. That loving adult is and has always been myself. I just didn't realize it before therapy. Story 130, feelings are always valid, but they're not always justified. Story 131, that most trauma comes from childhood, so I try extra hard to be a damn good mother. Story 132, how to speak to myself compassionately, and if I can't do that, how to speak objectively. No more negative self-talk. Story 133, I am good enough. Story 134, to stop apologizing compulsively. Instead of asking to be forgiven, if you've really caused trouble, take responsibility, try to mitigate the harm if any, promise to try to avoid repeating your mistake. Just spending a few days avoiding the words sorry or apologize was an eye-opener and very hard to do. It showed me that I was apologizing all the time for no good reason. Ceasing to do so was an instant boost of my internal state and personal interactions. Thank you, Greg. Just because their trauma was more severe doesn't mean that yours experienced had any less of an effect on you. I talked to them about peer rejection and bullying well into young adulthood. My first real job was incredibly toxic. I made the remark, well, at least I was never molested or beaten as a child, so my experiences weren't bad. Nope. They still affect me today, and my trauma was the reason for my mental illnesses. Trauma is trauma, and it's not a pissing contest, so don't let anyone that your experience wasn't bad. Even yourself. They look like everyone else, but they are monsters. Therapy is like a gang. The abusive therapists are protected. I believe it'll one day be well understood by everyone, like Catholic priests covering up SA. The most valuable thing I've learned from therapy is that not all therapists want to help you. They get away with physical, emotional, and sexual abuse way too often. Story 138. That sometimes you need to realize people say they're setting boundaries to manipulate you into thinking that how they're treating you is okay. Story 139. In your life you may have 1,000 positives and 5 negatives, but if you focus on the negatives they will overshadow the positives. Don't ignore the negatives but put them into perspective. Story 140. That I shouldn't prioritize my career over my health. Dropped out of college after that and I've never felt better. However, it was after I already had a stress-induced heart attack. Story 141. Family members don't have to be friends. Story 142. That most therapists are dumb. I wonder how they got their degrees. Story 143. We were always worthy of our own love the entire time. Our disposition does not begin to improve until we've accepted ourselves as we are and start caring for the good, bad, and ugly within that we all have. Story 144. The most valuable thing I've learned from therapy is that therapy is worthless. Story 145. How to properly identify the things I should and should not stress about and the proper amount of energy I should expend on them. Story 146. Cut out all the toxicity in your life. All of it. No matter who, what, where, or why. End it. Story 147. I am much more critical of myself than I would be of someone in the same exact situation. Am at least recognizing it. Being able to give myself grace and a break is much, much harder. Story 148. Don't set yourself on fire to keep others warm. Story 149. You don't have to have depression to be depressed. Story 150. How to say no. Story 151. I'm not responsible for others people's reactions. Honesty without tact is cruelty. Communication and honesty fix 99% of issues. Comparison is the thief of joy. Life isn't a race. You'll get to your milestones when you are meant to. Reframing thoughts with facts versus assumptions and emotional reactions. Sometimes bad stuff happens. It happens to all of us. It's how we view it and choose to respond to it that matters. Have a toolkit to combat depression and anxiety. Stuff like, did I eat right, sleep, hydrate, exercise, check in with a trusted friend. Story 152. That my brain is not wired like the vast majority of people and works differently. Autism. I could constantly fight that or work with it. Story 153. Time is the best medicine. Story 154. I need to work towards being content rather than happy. There is a big difference and it helps for me to stay more level. Story 155. Guilt is a sort of focus on an action, and shame is a focus on the self. I'm guilty about having done a bad thing. I'm ashamed that I am bad. Obviously, this is just this therapist's arbitrary take on distinguishing between two terms that, linguistically, can be perfectly interchangeable, but the point is to distinguish the objects of your regretful perseverating and to know how much of an indulgence in either is really healthy or corrective.